Every detail in this story comes from the historical record. The child's eyes are closed. Your job is to open them. You have a small ivory tool for this. It fits between the lid and the lower lash line. You press gently, and the eye opens and does not close again because the muscles that would close it have already stopped working. You place a small glass dome beneath the lid to hold its shape. You have done this before. You will do it again before the week is out. The mother is standing 3 feet behind you. She has not made a sound. The room smells of ether and silver nitrate, and something beneath both of those things that you have learned not to name. The window is covered with a dark curtain. The only light comes from a single lamp, and you have positioned it at 45 degrees to the subject's left side, the way Mr. Fenn showed you, the way that makes the face look like it is simply resting. There is a difference between a face that is asleep and a face that is dead. You know this now. You knew it before you started this work, but it was abstract knowledge, the kind that lives in the head and not in the hands. Now it lives in your hands. You arrange the white cotton behind the child's head. The cotton is not random. It is positioned to reflect light upward into the shadow beneath the chin. This is called fill. You learned the word 3 weeks into the job, and you have not stopped using it since. The camera is a large mahogany box on a brass tripod. It weighs 11 pounds without the lens. The lens alone cost more than your father earned in 4 months. You do not touch the lens. That is Mr. Fenn's work. Your work is the preparation, the arrangement, the chemistry, the waiting. You will be in this room for another 2 hours before the plate is ready. The mother has not moved. You do not look at her, not yet. Somewhere in this story, a man will ask you if you sleep. You will not know how to answer him. Not because the work is haunting. It is not haunting, not in the way people imagine, but because sleep, by the time you have been doing this work for 6 months, has changed in character. It has become something you do the way you do everything else, deliberately, with attention to detail, with an awareness of what is underneath. You will learn that the wealthy die differently than the poor. Not the dying itself. The dying is the same. It is what comes after. A child from a house in Mayfair is brought to you in a white dress with ribbon trim and a small bonnet with lace edge, and the hands are folded across the chest, and someone, before bringing the child here, has brushed the hair. A child from Bermondsey is brought to you wrapped in a wool blanket. The blanket is clean. The family made sure of it. But there was no dress. There was no ribbon. There was what there was. You will photograph both of them the same way. That is the one thing this work does not distinguish. There will be a night in the winter of 1867 when you carry a full glass plate across the studio in the dark, and you slip, and the plate shatters on the flagstone floor, and the image is gone, and you will have to go back to the family and explain that you need to begin again. The family will not be angry. They will say yes. Of course, yes. And that yes will be the thing you remember longest from that night. There will be a man who insists on holding his wife's hand during the exposure. You will have to explain that he cannot be in the frame. He will stand just outside it, his hand reaching in from the left edge, and you will let him, because Mr. Fenn will be out that afternoon, and because it seems like the right thing to do. and because you are 17 years old and still capable of making decisions based on what seems right rather than what is technically correct. There will be a smell you cannot get out of your coat. There will be a moment, 6 months into this work, when you realize you have stopped noticing it. That moment will trouble you more than the smell did. You have never told anyone what this work is like from the inside. People assume. They assume it is grim, or they assume you must be strange to do it, or they assume there is something wrong with you that allows it. None of these things are true, or none of them are entirely true. The truth is smaller and harder to explain. The truth is that you are very good at it, and that this is the only honest thing you can say about yourself right now. This is Quiet History at Bedtime. If this is your kind of story, a subscribe means everything right now. Every detail in this story comes from the historical record. Just relax and feel free to let this play as you drift off to sleep. Now, let us begin. Your name is Edmund Chalk. You are 17 years old. You have been working at Fenn's photographic studio on Cold Harbor Lane in Camberwell since the 14th of March, 1867, which is 8 weeks ago now, which means you are no longer new but are not yet experienced, which is the most uncomfortable position a person can occupy in any trade. Your father died in January. This is why you are here. Not in any complicated sense, in the simplest possible sense. Your father, William Chalk, was a compositor at a printing house off Borough High Street, and he died of a pulmonary hemorrhage on the 9th of January, which is a clinical way of saying his lungs bled, which is a clinical way of saying the work killed him, which is a clinical way of saying that the lead dust from the type trays got into him over 23 years, and eventually there was nothing left to get into. He was 41 years old. Your mother took in washing. Your sister Agnes was 11. You were the eldest child at 17, and you had been apprenticed to a cabinet maker in Peckham. But the cabinet maker had no obligation to keep a boy whose father had just died, and who now needed wages immediately rather than at the end of a 3-year term. Mr. Fenn advertised in the South London press for an assistant. The advertisement said, "Young man of steady temperament, some literacy required, willingness to learn chemical processes an advantage." You answered it because it was the first advertisement you saw, and because you needed to answer something. You did not know, when you answered it, what the work would involve. Mr. Fenn told you on the first day. He was direct about it. He said this studio serves clients whose loved ones have died. We make photographs of the deceased. The work requires steadiness and discretion. It is not unpleasant work in the sense that it is not difficult or dangerous. It is simply work that most people would rather not do, which is precisely why I am able to pay a fair wage for it. Your wage is 6 shillings a week. This is more than your father earned per week in his first 5 years at the printing house. You said yes before Mr. Fenn finished the sentence. London in 1867 is a city of 2.5 million people pressed into a space that was built for far fewer. The river runs brown all year now, even since the new drainage works began. And the fog in winter months is not natural fog, but a mixture of coal smoke and river damp that sits at chest height on the worst days and makes the gas lamps look like bruises in the air. Camberwell is not the worst of it. Camberwell is south of the river, which means it has escaped the worst density of the East End. But it has not escaped the smell, and it has not escaped the overcrowding, and it has not escaped the fact that in any given street in this neighborhood, between 40 and 60% of all children born will not survive to the age of 5. This is not a guess. This is a number that the Registrar General publishes annually. You have never read the Registrar General's report, but you have held the evidence of it in your hands 8 times in the past 8 weeks. The studio itself occupies the ground floor of a 3-story building on Cold Harbor Lane. The front room is the reception, which has a small velvet settee and a framed photograph of the Crystal Palace on the wall, which Mr. Fenn put there because it looks prosperous, and because clients who are grieving often find it steadying to look at something large and solid. Behind the reception is the studio proper, which is where the photography takes place. Behind the studio is the preparation room. Behind the preparation room is the dark room, which has no windows and 2 red lanterns and a smell of silver nitrate and pyrogallic acid that has saturated the walls so completely that no amount of ventilation will ever fully remove it. You spend most of your working hours in the preparation room and the dark room. You walk to work from your mother's house on Wells Street, which is 12 minutes if you go by the back route past the coal yard, 14 if you go by the main road. You leave at 7:30. You arrive before 8. Mr. Fenn arrives at 8 precisely. He has never, in the 8 weeks you have worked for him, arrived late. This morning is a Tuesday. You arrive at the studio at 7:53 and let yourself in with the key Mr. Fenn gave you in week 2 when he decided you were trustworthy enough to open without him. You hang your coat on the hook behind the reception door. You go to the preparation room and check the chemical stores. The main chemicals you work with are 4. The first is collodion, which is gun cotton dissolved in ether and alcohol. It is what you coat the glass plates with before sensitizing them. It goes on as a liquid and dries almost immediately into a thin, flexible film. The smell of it is somewhere between sweet and acrid, the way a chemical can smell like something it is not, and breathing it for too long gives you a headache behind the left eye specifically, which you have mentioned to Mr. Fenn, who said that this is normal and that you should open the window when you coat the plates, which you do, though the window in the preparation room is small and faces a wall. The second is silver nitrate solution. You coat the collodion-covered plate in this in a bath that sits in the darkroom, and the silver nitrate bonds with the collodion and makes the plate light-sensitive. Silver nitrate stains everything it touches a dark brown or black within a few hours of exposure. Your fingernails have been stained since week 1. Your left thumb, which you use to hold the plate by the corner, has a permanent dark line along the edge that you have stopped trying to scrub away. The third chemical is pyrogallic acid, which is the developer. After you expose the plate in the camera, you pour the developer across it in the darkroom under the red lamp and watch the image appear. This is the moment that still, after 8 weeks, makes you stop and simply watch. The image comes out of nothing, gray shapes against lighter gray, and then definition, and then the face. Every time, it does not stop being astonishing. The fourth chemical is sodium thiosulfate, which fixes the image permanently. Without this step, the plate would continue to darken and the image would be lost. You add this last. The entire process, from coating the plate to fixing the final image, takes between 12 and 20 minutes and must be completed in this window because the collodion wet plate dries out and loses its sensitivity. This is why the process is called wet plate collodion. This is why there is no pausing, no hesitation once you begin. Every step is timed. Every step depends on the step before it. Mr. Fenn has been doing this work since 1856. He learned the process from a man named Archer, who published the wet plate method in 1851 without patenting it, which means every photographer in England has had free access to the technique since then, which is one of the reasons photography has spread as rapidly as it has. When Mr. Fenn started, a portrait was still an object of some luxury. Now, in 1867, there are over 2,000 photographic studios in London alone. Most of them do the living. Mr. Fenn does the dead, and he does it because in 1858 a family brought him their child and asked if it was possible, and he said he did not know, but he would try. And the photograph was good enough that they wept when they held it, and he understood that this was a service that the city needed and that most of his colleagues would not provide. He has told you this story once. You'll believe it. You check the silver nitrate bath. The solution is a little thin, which means the concentration has dropped slightly. You note this on the small chalkboard Mr. Fenn keeps on the wall above the chemical shelf. He will address it when he arrives. You do not adjust the chemistry without him present. This is a rule. You prepare 4 glass plates. Each plate is 4 inches by 5 inches, which is the standard size for the mourning portrait. You clean each one first with a lint-free cloth, removing any dust or grease, because a single fingerprint on the glass will show as a cloud in the final image. You hold each plate up to the light from the small window and check for marks. 3 of the 4 are clean. 1 has a faint smear near the top corner. You clean it again. You hold it to the light. The smear is gone. You arrange the plates on the shelf. You check the camera. The camera is a Lancaster whole-plate mahogany box, serial number 1147, which Mr. Fenn has mentioned as if the number means something, and which you have not asked about because there are a great many things in this studio that seem to carry weight you do not yet have the context to understand. The lens is a Dallmeyer Rapid Reclinieren, which Mr. Fenn selected specifically for portrait work because it produces a slight softening at the edges of the frame, which is more flattering to a subject who cannot adjust their expression. This is the kind of detail that sounds strange when stated plainly. You have learned not to state things plainly in this work. You state them technically instead, and the technical language acts as a kind of container. At 8 o'clock exactly, Mr. Fenn arrives. He is 53 years old, tall, with gray whiskers and an unhurried posture that comes not from ease but from long practice at keeping things contained. He wears the same dark coat every day. You do not know if he has one coat or several identical coats, and have decided that the question is not yours to ask. He says, "Good morning, Edmund." You say, "Good morning, sir. The silver nitrate is running low." He looks at the chalkboard and says, "I'll address that this afternoon. We have a client at 9. You nod. He says, "The Hartley family from Brixton. A child, 7 months." You have already begun to understand what these details mean in practical terms. 7 months means a specific size, a specific weight. The arms will be arranged against the body. The head turned slightly to the left, because a straight-on photograph of an infant creates a flatness that the angle corrects. You have a small horsehair pillow for infants. You will retrieve it from the shelf in the preparation room. You go to get it now. The shelf in the preparation room holds the things that are not chemistry. There are 3 horsehair pillows of different sizes. There are 2 lengths of white cotton fabric for backdrops. There are small ivory tools for the eyes, which you now know the use of and have used and have put back precisely where they belong, because Mr. Fenn insists on order, not as a preference but as a professional requirement. Because disorder in this room at the wrong moment means a ruined plate and a family that leaves without what they came for. There is a small box of props on the bottom shelf. The props are a wooden cross on a silk ribbon, a small bunch of dried lavender, a porcelain doll, a toy soldier made of lead, a child's leather shoe. These are not decorations, they are compositional tools. A child posed with a familiar object reads as sleeping rather than dead, and this is what the family wants from this photograph. Not evidence of death, evidence of peace. You take the small horsehair pillow from the shelf. You go back to the studio and place it on the platform in the center of the room. The platform is a low wooden table draped with white cloth. The light from the north-facing skylight window above falls onto it at a constant, even angle that changes very little throughout the day, which is why Mr. Fenn chose this room for the studio and not the south-facing room at the back, which gets direct sun that moves and shifts and cannot be controlled. Photography is largely a matter of controlling what you cannot fully control. You have thought about this many times since starting this work. At 9:05, a knock comes at the front door. You answer it. The couple on the step are both in their mid-20s. The man is wearing a dark wool suit that is good but not new. The woman is wearing a black dress and a black bonnet and is holding a bundle wrapped in white flannel. The bundle is very small. The woman is not crying. She has the face of someone who cried through the night and has now arrived somewhere beyond crying, at the place where the face simply stops doing things. You say, "Mr. and Mrs. Hartley, please come in." You say this clearly and without pause, the way Mr. Fenn trained you, because hesitation at the door reads as discomfort, and discomfort is the last thing these people need from you. They come in. Mr. Fenn meets them in the reception room. He speaks to them quietly, facing them, his hands at his sides. He is explaining the process. He does this for every client on the first visit. He explains what will happen, and in what order, and how long it will take, and what they will receive at the end. What they will receive is 2 finished prints on albumen paper, mounted on card, in a small hinged case lined with purple velvet. The case costs an additional 6pence. Every family has paid it. You go to the preparation room and begin coating the plates. You pour a small pool of collodion onto the first plate and tilt the plate in a slow rotation, covering the surface evenly, letting the excess drain from the corner back into the bottle. The collodion sets in approximately 30 seconds at room temperature. You carry the plate to the dark room and lower it into the silver nitrate bath, face down, and wait. The dark room is small enough that you can touch both walls with your elbows extended. The red lanterns cast a dim, even light that is enough to see by without being enough to expose the plate. You wait 2 minutes, which is the sensitizing time. You count it in your head. You have counted it so many times that your internal count is now accurate to within 5 seconds. Mr. Fenn confirmed this for you using a pocket watch 2 weeks ago and said nothing more about it, but he has not stood over you in the dark room since. You lift the plate from the bath with the plate holder, drain it, and load it into the plate carrier. You carry the plate carrier to the studio. In the studio, Mr. Fenn has arranged the child on the horsehair pillow. The child is a boy. He is wearing a white gown with small tucks at the chest. His hands are resting at his sides, the fingers slightly curled, which is natural. His eyes are closed. You look at Mr. Fenn, who gives a small nod, which means the eyes are to stay closed. Not every client wants the eyes open. Some find it disturbing. Some find the closed eyes disturbing. You have learned to wait for instruction. The mother is seated in the chair to the left of the platform, 3 feet from her son. This is the correct distance, far enough that she will not be in the frame, close enough that she is present. You insert the plate carrier into the back of the camera. Mr. Fenn checks the focus by removing the lens cap and examining the image on the ground glass screen at the back. He adjusts the bellows forward by 2 small turns of the focusing knob. He checks again. He looks at you and says, "Open the backdrop on the right side by 6 inches. You go to the white cotton backdrop and create a fold on the right side, pinning it with the small brass pin you carry in your apron pocket. This lets more of the north light fall across the child's right cheek." Mr. Fenn checks the screen again. He says, "That's correct." He replaces the lens cap. You pull the dark slide from the plate carrier, exposing the sensitized plate inside to the camera mechanism. Mr. Fenn looks at the skylight. The cloud cover today is thin and even, which is ideal. Direct sun would create hard shadows on the face. Overcast sky gives flat, even illumination with no direction, which is also poor. This thin, consistent cloud cover is the light you want. It comes and goes over the course of the day, which is why you sometimes have to wait. Today, Mr. Fenn removes the lens cap. He counts. You have learned to read his count from the movement of his lips. 1, 2, 3. The exposure for an infant in this light, on a correctly sensitized plate, is between 3 and 5 seconds. He replaces the lens cap at 4. You slide the dark slide back into the plate carrier. You carry it to the darkroom. You pour the pyrogallic acid developer across the plate in a slow, even stream, tilting the plate to spread it, and then you are still. The studio is quiet. Through the wall, you can hear the street outside. A cart horse, the sound of someone calling a name you cannot make out. The ordinary world, going about its business on the other side of the wall. On the plate in your hands, a face appears. It comes out of the gray slowly, and then all at once, the way things do when you are watching for them. The nose first, the pale bridge of it, then the shadow of the closed eye socket, and then the full face, and the hands, and the white gown, and the folds of the cotton beneath him. You pour the fixing solution across the plate and tilt it again. The image stabilizes. You hold it under the red lamp. The boy is 7 months old, which means he has not yet developed the individual features that will distinguish an older child from another older child. But the photograph is specific in other ways. The curl of the fingers, the angle of the head, the way the gown's fabric catches light at the shoulder seam. This image exists now. It will continue to exist. You clean the plate carefully under the small tap in the corner of the darkroom, and you carry it back to the studio, where Mr. Fenn is still speaking to Mr. and Mrs. Hartley in a quiet, even voice about the printing process and about when the finished photographs will be ready, which is 3 days from now, which is standard. You show Mr. Fenn the plate. He holds it up to the light. He examines it for 30 seconds. He says, "Very good." He says this to you, not to the family, and in a voice the family cannot hear, and you understand that this is professional evaluation rather than praise, but the distinction matters less than it might have 2 months ago. Mrs. Hartley does not look at the plate while it is in the room. She is looking at her son on the pillow. You go back to the preparation room to coat the second plate because you always make 2 exposures. The second is insurance. The first is almost always usable, but almost is not always. And a family that has to be asked to return because the chemistry failed is not a family that will return. You pour the collodion. You tilt the plate. You wait for the surface to set. Through the wall, the city goes on. The second exposure takes 3 seconds, the same as the first. The development goes the same way. The fixing takes 2 minutes. You bring the second plate to Mr. Fenn in the studio. He looks at it and says, "The first was better. The focus is marginally softer on this one. Set it aside, but keep it." You set it aside. Mr. Fenn wraps the child carefully in the white flannel and returns him to Mrs. Hartley. He walks them to the door. You hear him tell them that the photographs will be ready on Friday, and that they may call at any hour between 9 and 5, and that he thanks them for their trust. The door closes. The studio is quiet. You stand in the preparation room with the second glass plate in your hands, the image of the boy still visible in the gray tones of the silver, and you do what you have learned to do, which is to put the plate on the shelf in the correct position, label it with the small paper tag that reads Hartley, and move to the next task. The next task is to rebalance the silver nitrate bath. You measure the solution with the small glass hydrometer and compare it to the figure on the chalkboard. You add silver nitrate crystals in a measured amount, stir gently, and test again. The number is correct now. You record it on the chalkboard. You clean the developer tray. You wash the fixing tray. You check the collodion bottle and see that you have used approximately 1/8 of the current supply, which means you should order more by the end of the week. You note this on the chalkboard. Mr. Fenn comes into the preparation room and looks at the chalkboard. He says, "Good." He looks at the chemical shelf. He says, "The pyrogallic acid is also running low. Order that as well." You note it. He pours himself a cup of tea from the small pot that sits on the spirit lamp in the corner of the preparation room. He does not offer you one. This is not unfriendliness. It is that the tea is his own, brought from home, and you have your own arrangement, which is that you bring bread and eat it at midday in the preparation room while the chemicals rest. You have been doing this for 8 weeks, and neither arrangement has been discussed nor changed. He sits down on the wooden stool by the chemical shelf with his cup of tea and says, "There is a second appointment at 2 o'clock. A Mr. Sanderson from Kennington, adult male, his wife. She was 44. You nod. He says, "This will be a longer sitting. The family has specific requirements about the composition. I'll handle the arrangement. You focus on the chemistry." You nod again. He drinks his tea. You prepare the afternoon. Outside, on Cold Harbor Lane, a costermonger is calling the price of apples, and the sound comes through the walls as a rhythm without words, a rise and fall like something breathing. And the city outside is very much alive, and you are inside with your chemicals and your clean glass and your chalkboard, learning week by week the patient and necessary work of being the last record that some people leave. The afternoon appointment arrives at 3 minutes past 2. The Sanderson family is 4. The husband, a man in his mid-50s named George Sanderson, who works as a clerk at a shipping office and holds himself with the rigidity of a man who is holding himself together through posture alone. 2 daughters, who appear to be around 20 and 17 respectively, both in black, and a son, perhaps 12, who stands very still near the door and looks at the floor. They have brought Mrs. Sanderson themselves in a hired cab. She is on a wooden board wrapped in a sheet, carried by the husband and a man who waited with the cab and has now gone. Mr. Fenn receives them. You take the board with Mr. Fenn and carry it carefully into the studio, and you lay it on the platform, and you step back, and Mr. Fenn speaks to Mr. Sanderson about the composition. Mr. Sanderson has brought a chair, not from this studio, from his house. It is an armchair, dark green velvet, worn at the armrests, and the cab driver apparently did not object to it in the cab, which tells you something about how the day has gone for this family. What Mr. Sanderson wants is this: his wife, seated in her own chair, in her own clothes, with her hands in her lap, looking as she always looked when she sat in that chair in the evening. This is what he has asked for. It is not a simple request, technically. Positioning a seated adult requires preparation that a lying infant does not. The body must be supported. The head must be held. There are brass clamps designed for this purpose, called head clamps, which are positioned behind the subject and hold the head in place during the exposure. Mr. Fenn uses them for living subjects who cannot remain still. He uses them for this purpose as well, because the alternative is an image that is blurred and unusable. You go to the shelf and retrieve the head clamp. You do not look at Mr. Sanderson while you do this. You have learned that this is the correct approach, not because looking at the family is wrong, but because you have observed that when you look at them, they look at what you are doing, and sometimes what you are doing is not something they need to watch at the moment of your doing it. Your looking at them draws their attention to the work. Your not looking at them allows them to look at their own person instead, which is where they want to look anyway. This understanding took approximately 4 weeks to develop. Mr. Fenn does the positioning himself. You assist by holding the weight as he adjusts. Mrs. Sanderson is a tall woman, and the chair is deep, and getting her correctly positioned so that the head clamp behind the chair back can hold the head in a natural angle takes 15 minutes of careful work. The daughters have been asked to wait in the reception room. Mr. Sanderson stays. He watches everything. At one point, Mr. Fenn asks him, "Was she left-handed or right-handed?" Mr. Sanderson says, "Right-handed." Mr. Fenn adjusts the position of the right hand accordingly, placing it on top of the left in the lap, which is the natural resting position for a right-handed woman of this era and class, when sitting quietly at home. Mr. Sanderson looks at the hands and does not speak for a moment. Then he says, "Yes, that's right." You carry the first prepared plate from the darkroom to the camera. The light from the skylight is lower now in the afternoon. Mr. Fenn adjusts the curtain to catch more of it. You reposition the small reflector panel to the left of the platform, which bounces the window light back into the shadow side of the subject's face. Mr. Fenn checks the focus. He adjusts the bellows. He checks again. He looks at you and says, 6 seconds. You pull the dark slide. He removes the lens cap. 6 seconds is a long time to stand still in a room with what you are standing still in. You count it in your head. At 6, Mr. Fenn replaces the cap. You slide the dark slide back. You carry the plate to the dark room. The development takes slightly longer at the longer exposure, and the image that emerges on the plate is darker in the shadows, which is correct for a darker room. The face comes through clearly, the hands in the lap, the velvet of the chair rendered in the gray scale that is all the wet plate process offers, but rendered with enough tonal range to suggest the texture. You fix the image. You clean the plate. You carry it to Mr. Fenn. He holds it to the light for a long time. Then he turns and shows it to Mr. Sanderson. Mr. Sanderson looks at it. He is a man who has been holding himself together through posture all afternoon, and the posture does not change when he looks at the photograph, but something behind his eyes does, and you see it, and you look away. Mr. Fenn says, quietly, "We will make a second exposure to be sure." Mr. Sanderson says, "Yes, please." You go back to the preparation room. You coat another plate. You tilt it in the dark and watch the chemistry do what chemistry does, indifferent and precise. And you think about the chair which this man brought from his home in a hired cab on the day his wife's body was waiting to be photographed. And you think about the word right-handed, and you think about the way the hands were placed. You are 17 years old, and you have been doing this work for 8 weeks. You are not certain what you know yet. You are very certain that you are learning something. You carry the second plate to the camera. The studio is still. Outside, on Cold Harbor Lane, it is beginning to get dark. The gas lamps will come on soon, one by one, the lamplighter moving down the street with his long pole. And the light outside will change from gray to amber, and the day will close, and the Sanderson family will go home to a house that has a green velvet chair in it with worn armrests, and in 3 days they will come back and collect 2 photographs in a hinged case lined with purple velvet, and they will have paid 6pence for the case, and every coin they have paid in this studio today will be the most well-spent money they will spend this year. You believe this. You have come to believe it over the past 8 weeks. It is the first professional conviction you have ever had about anything. Mr. Fenn removes the lens cap. You count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The second plate develops the same way. You pour the developer in the dark, tilt the plate, watch the face come back a second time, as if the chemistry itself needed to confirm what it had already decided. The tonal range on this exposure is marginally wider. The shadows in the velvet chair are a little deeper. Mr. Fenn will prefer the first plate. You already know this. The first was sharper in the eyes, and the eyes are always the thing that matters most. Because the eyes are where the family will look first and last, every time they open the case. You fix the plate and clean it and carry it out. Mr. Fenn looks at both plates together, holding one in each hand, angled to the last of the afternoon light from the preparation room window. He says, "The first." You nod. He says, "Set the second aside. Label both." You write Sanderson on 2 small paper tags and attach them to the shelf dividers. First plate on the left, second on the right. The order matters. In 3 days, when the family comes to collect, you will pull the first plate and make the prints from it, and the second plate will go back on the shelf, and eventually, if no one asks for a third print, it will be cleaned and reused. The glass is not wasted. Nothing in this studio is wasted. You begin the end-of-day clean. The developer tray first, which you rinse 3 times with clean water from the jug, because pyrogallic acid left in the tray overnight begins to oxidize and stains the enamel, and a stained tray affects the next day's development. You dry the tray with the lint cloth and set it face down on the shelf. The fixing tray next, which requires 2 rinses and a wipe with a cloth dampened in a weak solution of water and bicarbonate, because sodium thiosulfate, if it dries in the tray, forms crystals that scratch the next plate. You have scratched 1 plate this way, once. In week 2, Mr. Fenn said nothing, but he showed you the correct cleaning procedure again from the beginning, and you have not scratched a plate since. The collodion bottle goes back on the shelf with the glass stopper in place. Collodion kept without its stopper loses ether to evaporation within hours, which changes its viscosity, which changes how it coats the plate, which changes the final image in ways that are unpredictable and therefore intolerable. Every step in this process is connected to every other step. This is what you have come to understand about photography, and about this kind of photography. A single moment of inattention weeks before the sitting can ruin the image on the day. You cannot separate the chemistry from the composition, the preparation from the result. Every plate you coat is the beginning of something that will end either in a successful photograph or in a blank gray square of nothing. And the difference between those 2 outcomes lives in the details of what you do in the hours before the client arrives. You wipe down the workbench. You check the chemical shelf 1 more time. Collodion, silver nitrate, pyrogallic acid, sodium thiosulfate, ethanol for dilution, clean glass for plates. The levels are as you recorded them on the chalkboard. You will order the collodion and pyrogallic acid tomorrow. You write a note on the chalkboard with the supplier's name and the quantities, the way Mr. Fenn showed you in week 1, so that the order can be placed by letter in the morning. From the studio, you can hear Mr. Fenn moving the chair back into the center of the room. You go to help. The platform needs to be wiped down with a clean cloth, because the white cotton backdrop picks up dust from the street every time the door opens, and dust in the backdrop shows as dark specks in the final image. You take the backdrop down and fold it carefully with the fold on the outside, which keeps the center clean. You lay it on the shelf. You replace it with the second backdrop from the shelf below, which was laundered on Saturday and is clean. Mr. Fenn is at the camera, checking the lens. He removes a small piece of chamois from his coat pocket and polishes the front element in a slow circular motion, working from the center outward. He does this every evening. The lens, a Dallmeyer rapid rectilinear of the type that costs 12 shillings and 6pence from the supplier on Holborn, cannot be replaced from petty cash. It is the most expensive single object in this studio, more expensive than the camera, more expensive than the studio furniture, and its condition determines the quality of every photograph taken with it. He replaces the lens cap. He covers the camera with the dark cloth that hangs on the hook beside it. He says, 2 appointments tomorrow. A Mrs. Eliza Vane at 10 and a Mr. Frederick Okafor at 2. You say, I'll prepare 6 plates. He considers this. He says 8. Mrs. Vane has specified a group arrangement, multiple exposures. A group arrangement. You have not done a group arrangement yet. You have seen Mr. Fenn reference it in the appointment book, but have not been present for one. A group arrangement means multiple subjects in a single frame, which means a longer exposure to account for the larger area, which means more careful management of the light, which means the preparation has to be more precise, not less. You say, do you need me to set the reflectors differently? Mr. Fenn looks at you. This is not a question you would have asked 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, you did not know that reflector positioning changed with the number of subjects in the frame. You know it now because you have read the 2 books Mr. Fenn keeps on the shelf in the preparation room. A copy of H. Batten Pritchard's The Photographic Studios of Europe, which is largely about the studios of other countries but contains within it observations about light management that apply universally, and a small pamphlet by a photographer named Robinson on the subject of composition and tone, which is short enough that you have read it 3 times. Mr. Fenn says, I'll set them myself. But yes, come in 15 minutes early. You say, yes, sir. He takes his coat from the hook. He pauses at the door and looks back at the preparation room as if checking something, and then he looks at you and he says, you are doing the chemistry correctly. He leaves. You stand in the preparation room for a moment after the door closes. You have been working here for 8 weeks, and this is the first direct positive assessment you have received. You are aware that this is not, in objective terms, a large statement. The chemistry is either correct or it produces usable plates, and the plates you have produced have been usable, which is simply the minimum requirement of the job. But you are 17, and you lost your father 8 weeks ago, and you started this work knowing nothing about silver nitrate or glass plates or the correct angle of a head clamp, and now you know enough to notice when the silver nitrate bath is running thin, and to ask the right question about reflectors, and that is something, even if it is not very much. You put on your coat. You let yourself out with the key. Cold Harbor Lane at 6 in the evening is changed from Cold Harbor Lane at 8 in the morning. The costermongers are packing up their barrows. The pie man has gone. The rag and bone man who parks his cart at the corner has moved along his route. The people on the street are mostly heading somewhere, home or elsewhere, with the forward lean of people who have done a day's work and intend to stop doing it. You walk toward Wells Street. You pass the chemist on the corner, where in the window there is a display of patent medicines, several of which you now know to be mildly toxic in large doses, a piece of information that has come to you sideways through the work, through conversations with Mr. Fenn about what chemicals do to the body. The silver nitrate, for instance. On the skin, it stains. Internally, it causes permanent argyria, which is a condition where silver deposits accumulate in the tissues and turn the skin a permanent gray-blue like a bruise that covers the whole surface. Mr. Fenn mentioned this in week 3 and then moved on to the next subject. You have thought about it occasionally since. You do not put your fingers in your mouth. You have not put your fingers in your mouth since week 1. You are learning to carry what you know in a way that does not alter how you move through the world. This is also something the work is teaching you, though you do not yet have the language for it. The gas lamps are on along the main road now, throwing their amber light onto the wet stones of the pavement, because it has begun to rain, a light, misting rain that is not quite cold enough to be uncomfortable, but is cold enough to remind you that the year is still turning toward its darker end, and that the winter, when it comes, will bring more work, and more families, and more rooms like the one you have been in today. You think about the chair. The green velvet armchair with the worn armrests that Mr. Sanderson brought in a hired cab. You think about the word right-handed. You think about the sound of Mrs. Hartley in the studio while you worked, the quiet, steady rhythm of a woman on the other side of weeping, present and controlled. You think about the image of the boy on the plate, the curl of the fingers. You turn off the main road onto Wells Street and walk the last 100 yards to the house, and your mother has left the lamp on in the front room, and through the window you can see the yellow light of it against the curtain, and you think that this too is a kind of record, the lamp in the window, the evidence that something is still here, still waiting, still burning. You go inside. Your mother asks how the day was. You say it was a full day. She nods and says no more about it, because she understands, or understands enough, that this is work, and that you are doing it, and that the wage is coming in, and that these are the facts that matter right now, in this particular march of your lives. You eat the meal she has left for you on the back of the stove. You wash your hands. You look at the stain along the edge of your left thumb, the brown line from the silver nitrate, and you rub at it briefly and then stop, because it is not going anywhere. You go to bed. You do not dream. Or if you do not remember it in the morning, which amounts to the same thing. Tomorrow there are 8 plates to prepare, and a group arrangement to manage, and a question about reflector positioning that Mr. Fenn has not yet fully answered, and you intend to be ready for all of it. You close your eyes. The city outside your window is still going. It does not stop. It has never stopped. Somewhere on Cold Harbor Lane in Camberwell, in a dark preparation room above a flagstone floor, 2 glass plates are resting on a shelf with paper tags that read Sanderson and Hartley, and on those plates are faces, fixed in silver, fixed in time, permanent now in a way that the people who loved those faces can hold in their hands. You made those plates. You made them carefully and correctly and without hesitation. Sleep comes slowly, the way it does when the day has asked something of you, when you are not simply tired but used, in the way that good work uses you. You feel it at the edges first, the loosening of the shoulders, the weight of the blanket becoming more present, more specific, the sounds outside the window beginning to separate from meaning. The rain continues. The lamp in the front room, which your mother has turned low, makes a thin line of light under your door. You close your eyes. The chemistry will be ready in the morning. You are at the studio before anyone. You are always the first through the door. You are at the studio by 7:40. The door opens with pressure at the top of the turn, steady, not forced, and you go in. The preparation room is as you left it. You check the chalkboard first. The order for collodion and pyrogallic acid is written in your hand from yesterday. You add the quantities Mr. Fenn mentioned last evening. 2 bottles of collodion, 1 at 8 fluid ounces and 1 at 4, and a 1/4 pound jar of pyrogallic acid crystals, to be sent from Fenton's on Holborn by the end of the week. You will write the letter before 9. You begin preparing the plates. 8 plates for today. This is more than you have prepared in a single morning before. The record is 6, for a day in your 3rd week when 2 appointments arrived back to back, and a 3rd came in without warning, because the family had walked from Stockwell and did not know they were supposed to write ahead. Mr. Fenn handled that day without apparent difficulty. You handled it by not speaking unless spoken to, and by making sure every plate was ready before it was needed. 8 plates. You lay out the glass on the workbench in 2 rows of 4. The glass is cut to 4 inches by 5 inches from a larger sheet that comes from the glazier on Denmark Hill. You do not cut the glass yourself. It arrives pre-cut and pre-sized, wrapped in tissue paper. 12 plates to a package. You unwrap the first 8 plates and check each one against the light. All 8 are clean. No scratches, no fingerprints, no inclusions in the glass itself, which are small bubbles or streaks that sometimes occur in the manufacture, and which, when they appear, render that portion of the plate unusable. You clean each plate with the lint cloth anyway. The lint cloth is folded in quarters and used in a single direction across the surface, never circular, because circular motion can leave residue at the edges. Mr. Fenn showed you this in week 1, and you have never done it any other way. You coat the first plate. The collodion from the bottle flows in a slow pour onto the center of the plate, a pool about the size of a shilling, and then you begin the tilt, rotating the plate slowly through the 4 cardinal points and the 4 diagonals, walking the liquid to the edges, keeping it moving until the entire surface is covered and the excess is draining from the bottom corner back into the bottle. The whole motion takes about 12 seconds. The collodion begins to set at the edges within the first 5 seconds of spreading, which means you can feel the resistance increasing as you approach the end of the tilt, the liquid thickening slightly as the ether evaporates. You set the first plate on the drying rack. You coat the second. By the time you have coated all 8 and allowed the first to set sufficiently, Mr. Fenn arrives. It is 8 o'clock exactly. He removes his coat, looks at the drying rack, says nothing, goes to the chalkboard, reads the additions you have made to the order, and adds 1 item of his own, a bottle of glacial acetic acid for adjusting the collodion viscosity, which you had not thought to include, but which makes sense now that you consider the plates you coated yesterday, which went on slightly thicker than ideal. He says the vain appointment is a mother and 2 children. The elder child is 11, the younger is 8. They died within 4 days of each other. You understand what this means without him explaining it. 2 children within 4 days means an infectious disease moving through a household. In 1867, the most likely candidates are scarlet fever, diphtheria, or one of the still persistent strains of typhus that move through the denser neighborhoods every few years. Camberwell is not the worst district for it, but no district south of the river is without it entirely. The mother will want them together. You say, how do you want the arrangement? Mr. Fenn says, the younger one on the platform, lying. The elder seated beside, also supported. I'll need the full head clamp bracket and the angled support for the seated subject. The lighting will need to cover a wider area than yesterday. You go to the shelf and begin assembling the bracket. The head clamp bracket is a system of two upright rods joined by a horizontal bar that can be adjusted in height. The clamp itself, a padded fork of brass, attaches to the bar and holds the head from behind and slightly below, supporting the weight and holding the angle. For a child, the bracket needs to be at its lowest setting. The seated support is a different piece, a wooden wedge that goes under the subject to create a natural forward lean. The lean a person makes when they are resting comfortably in a chair, the lean that looks alive. You assemble the bracket at the lowest setting. You carry it to the studio. Mr. Fenn is adjusting the reflector panel on the left side of the platform, widening the angle to throw more fill light across the broader area the group will occupy. He has moved the platform itself forward by about 18 inches toward the camera, which shortens the camera-to-subject distance and means the lens will need to be set further back inside the bellows to maintain focus. This is a trade-off. A shorter distance gives more light on the subjects, but requires a recalibration of every other variable. You do not ask why he has moved the platform. You know why. 2 weeks ago, Mr. Fenn said, almost as an aside, "When you have two subjects side by side, the camera must be closer, or one of them falls into shadow. The choice is between repositioning the platform or repositioning the camera, and the camera is heavier." You have been thinking about this since he said it, turning it over in the background, and now it makes sense in a way that it did not when it was abstract. The vein appointment is at 10. At 9:50, you have 6 plates in the silver nitrate bath and 2 coated and drying on the rack. This is the correct preparation. You do not sensitize all the plates at once because a sensitized plate must be exposed within 12 minutes, and you cannot expose 12 minutes worth of plates in a group sitting where the arrangement will take longer to set. You sensitize in sequence instead. The first 2 plates go into the bath as you are finishing the arrangement, and by the time the camera is ready and the subjects are in position, the plates are ready too. This sequencing is the hardest thing to learn about wet plate work. It is not a single skill. It is a dozen small skills running simultaneously, each on its own timeline, and the whole thing depends on keeping track of all of them without losing any of them. You have made timing errors twice. Both times resulted in plates that were partially dried and therefore partially insensitive, and both times the exposures had large pale sections where the collodion had set before the silver could bond properly. Both times you prepared a replacement plate immediately and said nothing. Both times Mr. Fenn noticed the ruined plate on the discard shelf at the end of the day and said nothing either. You understood this to mean errors are acceptable once. The same error twice would be a different conversation. At 10 minutes past 10, the Vane family arrives. Mrs. Eliza Vane is a woman of perhaps 35. She is thin in the way that several weeks of not eating properly makes a person thin, and she is wearing black that is not new, which means she had mourning clothes already, which might mean a previous bereavement or might mean she had the foresight to have them made when the children first became ill. You cannot know which. She has with her a woman who appears to be a sister, who carries the younger child, and a man who may be a brother-in-law, who carries the elder. They are brought into the studio. Mr. Fenn takes over. You watch from the doorway of the preparation room. because you need to see the arrangement to know when to begin the first sensitization, and because watching Mr. Fenn arrange a group is the most instructive thing you can do right now. He begins with the platform. He places the horsehair pillow at the center and positions the younger child, a girl, on the pillow lying on her left side, face toward the camera. The position requires that the head be slightly elevated to bring it to the same horizontal level as the elder child who will be seated beside her, and Mr. Fenn adjusts this with 2 folded pieces of white cotton tucked beneath the pillow at the head end. He then places the seated support wedge to the right of the girl and positions the elder child, a boy, seated on the wedge with his right leg extended forward and his left tucked slightly back, which creates a natural, casual seated posture. The boy's head is held by the head clamp bracket, the clamp adjusted to sit just below the occipital bone at the base of the skull, which is the natural fulcrum of the head's weight. The angle of the clamp is set so the head tilts very slightly downward and to the left, which is the angle a boy of 11 would naturally hold his head if he were sitting beside his younger sister and looking at her rather than at the camera. This detail, the angle of the head, looking at the sister, you understand, watching this, that Mr. Fenn is not only managing a technical problem, he is composing a relationship. The final photograph will show a boy sitting beside his sister, looking at her, which is how the mother will want to remember them, not as subjects of a photograph, as themselves, together, in a moment. You go to the dark room and load the first plate into the silver nitrate bath. 2 minutes. You come back to the doorway. Mr. Fenn is speaking to Mrs. Vane about the composition. He is showing her the position of the children with his hands, a gesture like framing, the thumbs and forefingers making a rectangle. Mrs. Vane is watching. She makes one small adjustment. She wants the girl's right hand visible, not tucked beneath her body as it currently is. Mr. Fenn reaches in and repositions the hand, drawing it forward so it rests on the front edge of the pillow, the fingers loosely open. Mrs. Vane looks at this for a long moment. Then she says, "Yes." You retrieve the first plate from the silver nitrate bath, load it into the plate carrier, and carry it to the camera. Mr. Fenn checks the focus. He takes longer than usual, adjusting the bellows twice, checking the ground glass screen from 2 different angles. A group arrangement presents a depth of field problem that a single subject does not. The boy, seated, is slightly further from the camera than the girl on the pillow, which means perfect focus on one may mean slightly soft focus on the other. Mr. Fenn is splitting the focus between the 2, finding the plane that keeps both faces acceptably sharp. He says, 8 seconds. 8 seconds is the longest exposure you have done. You pull the dark slide. Mr. Fenn removes the lens cap. 8 seconds in this room is its own kind of time. You do not look at Mrs. Vane. You count. At 8, Mr. Fenn replaces the lens cap. You slide the dark slide back and carry the plate to the darkroom. The development takes the same 2 minutes regardless of exposure length. What changes is the character of the image that emerges. A longer exposure means more light has reached the silver, which means the highlights are brighter and the shadows are deeper and the overall tonal range is wider. You pour the developer and watch the plate, and the image comes in the order it always does. The lightest areas first, the faces before the shadows, the the white cotton before the dark fabric of the clothes. Two faces, together. You look at this image for perhaps 3 seconds longer than you need to before you pour the fixer. You fix it and clean it and carry it out. Mr. Fenn takes the plate. He holds it for a long time. He turns and shows it to Mrs. Vane. Mrs. Vaughn looks at the plate in Mr. Fenn's hands. She stands very still. The sister, behind her, puts a hand on her shoulder. Mrs. Vaughn says nothing. After a moment, she says, "Could we do one more?" Mr. Fenn says, "Of course." You are already back in the preparation room, loading the second plate into the bath. The second exposure is identical to the first, except that Mr. Fenn asks you to open the right side reflector panel by 4 more inches before he removes the lens cap, which brightens the shadow under the boy's chin very slightly and makes the two faces read more evenly in tone. You make 4 exposures in total. Mr. Fenn selects the third as the primary plate. He tells Mrs. Vane that the photographs will be ready in 3 days. He does not charge extra for the additional exposures. You know this because you have watched him absorb additional work without comment many times in the past 8 weeks, and you understand that this is part of the service, that the extra exposure is not generosity but professional standard. The Vane family leaves at 11:45. You begin the clean. The Okafor appointment is at 2. You eat your bread in the preparation room at noon and read the smaller of the 2 books on the shelf, the Robinson pamphlet, for the 4th time. It is 22 pages. You have been reading it in the way you read something when you already know the words but are looking for what you did not understand last time. The section on tonal distribution in group arrangements makes more sense now than it did the first 3 times. The section on managing depth of field makes considerably more sense. You put the pamphlet back on the shelf. At 1:30, you begin preparing plates for the Okafor appointment. Mr. Fenn has told you nothing about the subject except a name and a time. You prepare 4 plates, which is your standard for a single subject, and you set the studio back to its single subject configuration. The platform centered, the single horsehair pillow, the reflector panels at their standard 45-degree angles. Mr. Frederick Okafor arrives at 3 minutes past 2. He is a tall man, perhaps 45 years old, wearing a well-cut dark coat and a white cravat, and he speaks to Mr. Fenn in the reception room in a voice you can hear through the wall as measured and clear. He is from Sierra Leone originally, you will learn later from Mr. Fenn's appointment ledger note, and has been in London for 15 years, and is a merchant who trades in timber and cotton goods between West Africa and the Port of London. He lives in a house in Stockwell. He has brought his son. The son is 9 years old. His name is written in the appointment book as James Okafor. Mr. Frederick Okafor carries the boy himself into the studio and lays him on the platform with a care and steadiness that you have seen before in this room. The gentleness that comes when a man is performing a deliberate, composed act as the only available response to something that cannot be responded to in any other way. The boy is wearing a dark jacket with a white collar. His hair is cut close. His hands have been folded before he arrived. Mr. Fenn speaks to Mr. Frederick Okafor about the composition in the quiet, measured way he always speaks in this room, and Mr. Frederick Okafor listens and nods and makes one request. He wants the boy's left hand showing, not the right, because the boy was left-handed, and that is the hand he used for everything. You think about yesterday. Right-handed, left-handed. The hands are how people know each other. Mr. Fenn repositions the left hand to rest on top, the fingers relaxed and slightly curved in the natural resting position. He asks if the eyes should be open or closed. Mr. Frederick Okafor considers this for a moment and says, "Closed." You sensitize the first plate. The exposure is 4 seconds, standard for a single subject in this afternoon light. The image that comes up on the plate in the darkroom is one of the clearest you have produced. The focus is sharp across the full face, which means the plate was correctly sensitized and the developer went on evenly, and you allowed the development to run exactly the right duration before fixing. You hold it under the red lamp and there is nothing to correct. You bring it to Mr. Fenn. He looks at it. He says, "Very good, Edmund." This is the second time he has said this to you. The first was yesterday afternoon. You notice that the phrase is becoming less about the plate and more about the accumulation of plates, as if what he is actually assessing is not the single image but the consistency of the person making them. You make a second exposure. Mr. Frederick Okafor watches the second preparation with more attention than most clients watch any of the process. He asks, at one point, what the chemical in the tray is. You tell him, pyrogallic acid. A developer, it reacts with the silver salts in the collodion to produce the visible image. He nods and says, "And this process is permanent?" You say, "Yes, sir. Once the image is fixed with the sodium thiosulfate, it will not change." He looks at the platform where his son is lying. He says, "I would like 3 prints, if that is possible." Mr. Fenn says, "Of course." 3 prints from a single plate is standard. The prints are made on albumin paper, which is paper coated with a thin layer of egg white mixed with ammonium chloride and then floated on a silver nitrate solution, which makes it light sensitive in the same way the glass plate is light sensitive. You print by placing the glass negative in contact with a sheet of albumin paper and exposing it to daylight, which passes through the negative and produces a print. The darker areas of the negative, which are the highlights of the subject, block more light and produce the lighter areas in the print. The lighter areas of the negative, which are the shadows, let more light through and produce the darker areas. A print from a good negative can be made in 3 to 10 minutes of exposure to good daylight and can be repeated as many times as the negative survives, which, for a well-fixed glass plate kept dry and clean, is effectively indefinitely. You have explained this to exactly 1 client before today. You explain it now to Mr. Frederick Okafor. He listens to the whole explanation. He says, "So there will always be a negative. The image is not only in the prints." You say, "Yes, sir." He thinks about this for a moment. He says, "Good." After he leaves, you stand in the preparation room with the Okafor plate in the holder on the shelf, and you think about what he said. The image is not only in the prints. There is something in this that runs beyond what he meant practically. The negative exists. It is here, in this room, on this shelf, and from it the image can be reproduced. The boy's face can come back out of the chemistry any number of times, as long as the plate is here. This is what photography offers that nothing offered before it. You have known this intellectually since before you started the work. You are understanding it now in a different way. You finish the end-of-day clean with more attention than usual. The Okafor plate goes on the shelf between two pieces of card to protect its surface. The Vane plates go to the left of the Hartley plates from yesterday. The Sanderson plates from yesterday are in the printing queue, which means tomorrow morning you will make the prints, contact print them in the daylight frame on the south-facing windowsill, and tone them in the gold chloride toning bath to stabilize the silver and shift the image color from the raw reddish-brown of new print silver to the cooler, more stable purplish-brown of a toned print. The toning bath is the step that makes the prints last. Without it, the silver in the print oxidizes within months and the image fades, beginning at the highlights, which go yellow first, and then the midtones, which flatten, and finally the shadows, which lose their depth and become a uniform warm gray. You want the prints to last. You clean the gold chloride toning bath and top it up from the stock solution. You wash the printing frame glass. You lay out 3 sheets of albumin paper for the Sanderson prints, which are stored in the light-proof box on the lower shelf, interleaved with black tissue to prevent the sheets from sticking. Mr. Fenn comes into the preparation room at 5 and looks at the shelf. He says, "The Okafor plate is good. I looked at it before you put it away." You say the focus held well. He says, "It did. You sensitized it correctly." He pauses. He says, 3 appointments tomorrow. A family from Peckham in the morning, a single subject at noon, and a referral from Dr. Culpepper in the afternoon. A referral from the doctor. You know what this means. Dr. Culpepper practices on Brixton Road and has sent 4 referrals to this studio in the time you have been working here. The referrals come from families who learned about Mr. Fenn through the doctor, who recommends the studio to patients who lose a family member. It is not an arrangement with a fee attached. It is simply the informal network by which this work reaches the people who need it. You note the 3 appointments on the chalkboard. Mr. Fenn says, "I want you to handle the chemistry for the noon appointment independently. I will be in the studio for the arrangement and the exposure. You run the darkroom without me checking." You look at him. He says you are ready for it. He leaves. You stand in the preparation room in the fading afternoon light and consider this. In the 8 weeks you have been here, every plate has been a collaboration in the sense that Mr. Fenn has been available to check what you are doing, to notice if something is going wrong, to correct before the error compounds. Tomorrow, for 1 appointment, that structure changes. The darkroom will be yours entirely. You go over the chemistry in your head. Collodion pour and tilt. 12 seconds. Set the plate on the rack. Wait for the surface to dull slightly, which indicates the ether has set the outer layer. Load into the silver nitrate bath. 2 minutes exactly. Drain and load into the plate carrier. Carry to the camera. Pull the dark slide. After exposure, carry to the darkroom. Pour the developer in a single, even stream from the top corner. Tilt to spread. Watch the image appear, which takes between 30 and 90 seconds depending on exposure and temperature. When the darkest areas reach full density, but before the highlights begin to block up, pour the developer off. Rinse with clean water. Fix with sodium thiosulfate for 2 minutes. Rinse again. Carry the finished plate out. You have done every one of these steps dozens of times. You have never done all of them without someone in the building who could step in. Tomorrow you will. You put on your coat. You lock the studio. You walk home through the November evening, which has turned properly cold now, the first real cold of the season, the kind that comes from the north and carries with it the promise of a London winter. Fog, coal smoke, the smell of damp stone, and the sense that the city is compressing itself, drawing inward, pulling the dark over itself like a lid. The gas lamps are on early tonight. On the corner of Cold Harbor Lane, a woman is selling paper twists of roasted chestnuts from a brazier, and the smell of them hits you before you see the fire, and you stop without meaning to, because it is the smell of warmth in cold air, which is a specific thing, a thing that has been the smell of November in London for longer than anyone has been counting. You do not buy the chestnuts. You have the bread from lunch still in your pocket, and sixpence to last until the end of the week, and you are not going to spend it on chestnuts, no matter how right the smell is. You walk on. At home, your mother is still up, which is unusual. She is sitting at the kitchen table with a letter, which she puts down when you come in. You can see from the handwriting on the envelope that it is from your aunt in Portsmouth, who writes twice a year and never with good news. But this evening your mother's face is not the face she makes when the news is bad. It is the face she makes when she is deciding something. She says, Agnes has been asked to go to the Kendalls on Bricklayers' Arms Lane to help with the children. It would be 3 shillings a week and her meals. Agnes is 11. 3 shillings a week is not nothing. Your mother says, what do you think? You think about this. You think about a child in a kitchen on Bricklayers' Arms Lane, eating meals that are someone else's, sleeping in a room that is not hers, spending 3 shillings of earned money on things you do not yet know. You think about your mother at the table with a letter. You think about the wage that comes in from Cold Harbor Lane every Friday, 6 shillings, and whether it is enough. You say, let her decide. Your mother looks at you. She says she's 11. You say, then you decide. But ask her what she wants first. Your mother folds the letter. She says, you sound like your father. You do not answer this. You eat and wash and go to bed, and you lie in the dark and think about tomorrow's darkroom, the noon appointment that will be yours entirely to manage, and you run the chemistry in your head one more time from the start, every step, every time, every variable. You fall asleep doing this. It is as close to peaceful as November gets. 3 weeks pass. They pass the way weeks pass in a working life, in the rhythm of preparation and appointment and chemical and plate, in the accumulation of technique, in the small daily evidences that you are becoming someone who knows how to do this work, rather than someone learning to do this work. The distinction is one of weight. Knowing lives in the head. Skill settles into the hands, and your hands, by the middle of November, know things your head has not yet caught up to. The noon appointment went correctly. Mr. Fenn came in at the end and looked at the plate and said, "Good," and moved on to the next thing. This is how he marks progress, not with ceremony, with the next task. In 3 weeks, you have photographed 11 subjects. 4 infants under the age of 1, 3 children between 2 and 10, 2 adults, 1 adolescent girl of perhaps 15, who was brought in by a woman who said only that she was the aunt, and who stood at the window throughout the sitting and looked at the street, and who, when you showed Mr. Fenn the plate afterward, and he said the exposure was slightly long, said nothing and paid the full amount and left. One elderly man, very old, 90 perhaps, whose face in the photograph has the quality of a landscape that has been weathered for a very long time. Mr. Fenn looked at this plate for a long time and then set it aside and said, "That one we frame separately." You asked what he meant. He said, "Sometimes a plate has something in it that is not just the exposure. You'll learn to see it." You are learning. It is now the last week of November. The cold has become the fact of every morning, the thing you dress against, the reason for the extra blanket at night and the smaller breakfast because you are spending the money on coal for the kitchen grate instead of bread. Your mother's washing brings in 2 shillings and 6pence most weeks. Agnes decided to go to the Kendalls and has been there for a fortnight and came home last Sunday looking, if anything, more herself than when she left, which you had not expected but which relieves something you had been carrying without naming it. The studio on Cold Harbor Lane is colder than the street. The preparation room has no fire because fire means smoke, and smoke means particles in the air. And particles in the air settle on the glass plates and ruin the collodion surface. You work in your coat. Mr. Fenn works in his coat. The only heated room is the reception, which has a small grate and which the clients sit in while they wait, and which warms to something tolerable within half an hour of lighting. You have developed, over the past few weeks, a way of working in the cold that involves keeping your hands close to your body between tasks, warming them against your chest through the coat fabric, so that when you pick up a plate, your fingers are not so cold that they tremble. Trembling hands are not acceptable in this work. A plate dropped in the silver nitrate bath is a plate ruined. A plate dropped on the flagstone floor is a plate shattered. And a family that came here for something they will have to wait another day to receive. You have not dropped a plate. You have come close once. You do not intend to come close again. The appointment book for the last week of November shows 5 appointments, which is more than any previous week. Mr. Fenn noted this without comment, which is how he notes most things. You noticed it because you are responsible for the plate preparation and the chemistry, and 5 appointments in a week means planning the chemical supplies more carefully than 4 appointments requires. You have ordered the supplies. They arrived on Monday from Fenton's on Holborn. 2 bottles of collodion, the 1/4-pound jar of pyrogallic acid, the glacial acetic acid Mr. Fenn requested, and 1 additional item you ordered on your own judgment, a second hydrometer for testing the silver nitrate concentration, because the one you have been using has a hairline crack in the glass that has not yet affected its accuracy but will. Mr. Fenn looked at the second hydrometer when it arrived and said, "Good thinking." He said nothing else. It is enough. On the Wednesday of that last week in November, something happens that does not happen often enough to have a procedure for it. A man arrives at 9 in the morning without an appointment. You answer the door. He is perhaps 50, heavy-set, wearing a coat that is expensive but looks as though he has been wearing it continuously for 2 days, which he probably has. His eyes are red at the rims. He says, without preamble, "I need photographs made of my wife. She died yesterday morning. I was told you could help." You say, "Please come in." You take him to the reception room and give him the chair nearest the fire. You go to the preparation room and find Mr. Fenn, who is coating plates for the 10 o'clock appointment. You say, "There is a man in reception without an appointment. His wife died yesterday." Mr. Fenn sets down the bottle. He goes to the reception room. You hear him speaking to the man. You cannot hear the words, but you hear the cadence, which is the same cadence he uses with every client, steady and unhurried, without pressure. The cadence that says, "You are in the right place." After 5 minutes, Mr. Fenn comes back to the preparation room. He says his name is Alderton. His wife is at the house, not far. He wants a sitting there in her own surroundings. He says she would have wanted that. An out-of-studio sitting. You have not done one of these before. Mr. Fenn says, "We'll go this afternoon. You'll carry the equipment. I'll need the full field kit." The field kit is kept in a large wooden case under the workbench. You pull it out and open it. Inside is a folded tripod, a plate carrier that holds 6 plates in individual slots, 2 bottles of collodion, the darkroom canteen, which is a self-contained unit about the size of a large hatbox that holds the developer and fixer in sealed bottles, a red lantern, and a small folding table for the chemical work. Everything a darkroom needs, made portable. You begin checking the contents. The collodion in the field kit is fresh. The developer bottle is full. The fixer bottle is 3/4 full, which is enough for 6 plates. The red lantern has oil. The folding table has all 4 legs, and the surface is clean. You add a clean cloth and 2 spare plate carriers from the shelf above. Mr. Fenn comes in and looks at the kit. He says, "Add the ivory tools and the head clamp and the small pillow." You add them. He says, "We'll go at 2. The 10 o'clock appointment will be finished by noon, and I'll eat before we leave." The 10 o'clock appointment arrives on time. It is a young couple, perhaps 22 and 20, who have lost their first child, an infant of 3 weeks. The mother carries the baby herself. She does not speak to you or to Mr. Fenn beyond what is necessary, but she watches everything you do with the focus of someone who has decided that watching carefully is the last thing she can do for this child, and you work with the care that deserves. The exposure is 3 seconds. The plate is good. The mother looks at the wet plate when you bring it out and says, "Is that him?" You say yes. She looks at it for a long time. She says, "May I hold it?" You look at Mr. Fenn. He gives the small nod. You show her how to hold the plate by the very edges without touching the surface, and she holds it in both hands and looks at it for perhaps 2 minutes, and you and Mr. Fenn stand quietly in the studio while she does. Then she hands it back to you. She says, "Thank you." She says it to you, not to Mr. Fenn. You say, "We will have the prints ready on Friday." She nods. After she leaves, you begin preparing the field kit for the afternoon visit. You sensitize 2 test plates and develop them in the darkroom canteen to confirm the portable chemistry is working correctly. The developer in the sealed bottle is slightly more concentrated than the studio developer because it has been sitting in the bottle for 2 weeks without use, and the acetic acid buffer has dissipated slightly, which means the development will be faster. You note this, and you will compensate by shortening the development time by about 15 seconds when you are in the field. Mr. Fenn eats his lunch. You eat your bread. At 2 o'clock, you load the field kit onto the small handcart that leans against the wall outside the studio, and you and Mr. Fenn walk with it through the streets toward the Alderton house, which is on a road called Cold Harbor Terrace, 6 minutes from the studio, which is close enough that the plates should not suffer from the cold during transport. The Alderton house is a mid-terrace house, 3 stories, with a black crepe tied to the door knocker, which is the signal to the neighborhood that there has been a death in the house. In 1867, there is no ambiguity about what this means and no need to explain it. The black crepe is a language that the street reads without being told. It says, "Someone here has stopped. Please adjust accordingly." You carry the kit inside. The house smells of beeswax and cut flowers, and underneath those things, something you recognize from the studio, the smell of a room that has not been aired. Mr. Alderton takes you upstairs. Mrs. Alderton is in the bedroom, in the bed, in a white nightgown, with her hair arranged on the pillow around her. Someone, before you arrived, did this, arranged the hair, smoothed the nightgown, put her hands in the position they are in, crossed at the wrist over the coverlet. The room has 2 windows. You look at the windows. The light comes in from the southwest in the afternoon, which means it comes in at an angle and moves quickly. The afternoon light in a bedroom in late November is already golden and failing by 2:30, which means you have perhaps 40 minutes of usable light before you would need additional lamps, and additional lamps in a bedroom carry risks, mainly of the oil lamp tipping in a space full of fabric. You say to Mr. Fenn, quietly, "The light is good now, but moving fast." He nods. He says, "Set up immediately." You unfold the tripod in the space between the bed and the far wall, which is just wide enough. You assemble the field camera, a smaller version of the studio camera, and attach the lens. You unfold the small table beside the bed and set up the darkroom canteen. You coat the first plate. In the confined space of the bedroom, the ether smell from the collodion fills the room very quickly. Mr. Alderton is at the door. He does not come further in during the preparation. You understand that this is not reluctance to see his wife, but reluctance to be in the way of people doing something that requires concentration. You sensitize the plate in the darkroom canteen. The canteen's small silver nitrate bath holds exactly 1 plate. You immerse it, close the lid, and count 2 minutes in the dark, standing in the corner of the bedroom with the canteen balanced on the small table, counting in your head. Mr. Fenn has positioned the camera. He has made one small adjustment to the arrangement. He has turned Mrs. Alderton's head very slightly toward the window, perhaps 5 degrees, so that the light from the southwest window catches the left side of the face cleanly. He does this by placing 2 fingers beneath the pillow near the right ear and pressing gently. The adjustment is invisible when done. The effect on the plate will not be invisible. You retrieve the plate from the canteen and load it into the plate carrier. The camera is positioned. Mr. Fenn checks the focus. He says 5 seconds. The light from the window is warm and even. The low autumn sun diffused through the glass, and it falls across the bed and across Mrs. Alderton's face and across the white of the nightgown and the dark wood of the headboard behind her. And there is a quality to this light at this moment in this room that is unlike the studio light, which is controlled and constant and north-facing and reliable. This light is alive in the way studio light is not. It will not last. You pull the dark slide. Mr. Fenn removes the lens cap. You count 5 seconds. The lens cap goes back. You carry the plate carrier to the small table and open the darkroom canteen. You pour the developer in the dark, in the corner of the bedroom, under the dim glow of the red lantern you have placed on the floor. The image appears. The face, the pillow, the white of the nightgown, the hands crossed at the wrist. The light from the window, which was alive and falling, and specific to this afternoon, is now fixed. You fix the plate. You clean it. You carry it across the room and show it to Mr. Fenn. Mr. Fenn looks at it. He looks at Mr. Alderton. He says, "Come and look." Mr. Alderton comes into the room. He looks at the plate. You do not watch his face. You look at the window where the light that was in the plate is still coming through, slightly lower now, slightly warmer, still moving. You make a second exposure, and then a third, because the light is still good and because Mr. Fenn has already decided to charge Mr. Alderton the standard sitting fee regardless of how many plates you use, and because 3 exposures give 3 chances at something that cannot be staged again. The third plate is the one Mr. Fenn selects. In it, the light from the window falls at exactly the angle that makes one side of the face bright and the other side hold its depth, and the hands at the wrist are in perfect focus, and the hair on the pillow is precise, and the whole thing has a quality that is not only technical. You pack the field kit. You reassemble the case. You carry it back downstairs. At the door, Mr. Alderton shakes Mr. Fenn's hand. He looks at you. He says, she would not have recognized this process. She never liked having her portrait made when she was alive. You say, "Yes, sir." He says, "I think she would have been relieved, that it was done quietly." He nods. You go back out into the late November street, and you and Mr. Fenn walk with the handcart back to the studio in the early dark, the gas lamps already on, the cold coming properly now, and you think about the light in that bedroom and the way it was alive and then fixed, and how the plate you are carrying in the wooden case has both of those things in it at once. The light that was moving. And the moment it stopped, you think about this all the way back to Cold Harbor Lane. You do not try to resolve it. Some things you are learning to carry without resolving. Back in the studio, you unpack the field kit and clean every component and replace what needs replacing and note what needs restocking on the chalkboard. And the night comes down over the studio and over the street and over the city, and you are the last one out, the way you often are, and the cold outside is complete now, and you walk home through it with your hands in your pockets. December arrives the way December always arrives in London, which is not suddenly but by degrees, each day a little darker than the one before. The light at noon doing the work that the light at 3 in the afternoon was doing in September. The city adjusting itself to the compression of it, the shop fronts staying lit longer, The coal carts working earlier in the morning, the breath of every person on every street visible now as a small white flag of existence against the gray air. The studio is colder than it has ever been. You arrive each morning, and the preparation room holds the cold from the night before. And the first thing you do is go to the reception room and light the grate, which takes the chill off that room within 30 minutes, but does nothing for the preparation room, which you work in with your coat on and your hands kept moving between tasks, because hands that stop moving in this cold stiffen within minutes, and stiff hands are not precise hands, and precision in this room is not optional. Mr. Fenn noticed, in the second week of December, that your development times had lengthened by approximately 10 seconds per plate. He noticed because the images were coming out slightly thinner than they had been in November. Not unusable, marginally thinner, which in the midtones meant a slight loss of separation, which in the final print meant faces that were fractionally less distinct. He said nothing directly. He put a small spirit lamp on the shelf above the developer tray. You understood what it was for. The developer, pyrogallic acid solution, works faster at higher temperatures. In summer, a 60-second development in a warm room might produce the same density as a 90-second development in a cold room. The spirit lamp holds the developer bottle near a small flame and keeps the solution at a consistent temperature, regardless of what the room is doing. You lit the spirit lamp the morning after it appeared on the shelf, and your development times returned to what they had been. Mr. Fenn did not mention this. This is how most things are communicated in this studio. Through objects placed in specific locations, through the chalkboard, which speaks in both directions, your notes and his additions existing side by side, through the appointment ledger, which you are now permitted to read but not to write in, because the ledger is Mr. Fenn's record of the business and will be for as long as this studio operates. You read it when you can, with attention. The ledger goes back to 1858. In 1858, Mr. Fenn took 12 commissions for the year. In 1863, he took 31. In the year to date, which is now the middle of December 1867, he has taken 67 commissions. The increase is not primarily from more people dying. The increase is from more people knowing that this service exists. The first families who found him by accident, through a doctor or a neighbor or a notice in a church. The families who find him now find him because someone they know a year or 2 years ago stood in this reception room with a grief they did not know what to do with, and left with something they could hold. That is the business. It grows the way trust grows. By the third week of December, the appointment book is carrying 9 commissions for the remaining 2 weeks of the month. 9 commissions in 2 weeks. You have never prepared this many plates in this time frame. You do the mathematics on the chalkboard. 9 commissions, 2 exposures minimum per commission, probably 3 for group arrangements, means a minimum of 18 plates, and possibly 25 or more. You check the collodion supply, enough for 12 plates. You check the silver nitrate, enough for approximately 15 baths. You check the pyrogallic acid, enough for 8 developments. You write the order on the chalkboard before Mr. Fenn arrives. He reads it when he comes in, adds 1 item, and says, "Send the letter this morning." You write the letter to Fenton's on Holborn, itemize the order precisely, request delivery by Wednesday, and seal it with the wax and stamp that Mr. Fenn keeps in the reception room desk drawer. You take it to the post office on the way in the next morning and confirm the Wednesday delivery window with the counter clerk. The supplies arrive Tuesday afternoon. You put everything in its correct place on the chemical shelf and update the chalkboard. Wednesday brings 3 appointments. The first is a family from Peckham Rye, a grandmother and her daughter, who have lost the daughter's husband. He was 38 years old, a blacksmith, and the composition they want is him in the chair from his own kitchen, which they have not brought this time but will bring next time, if the quality of the sitting today is satisfactory. You make 2 exposures. Both are good. They bring the chair on Friday. The second appointment is a single infant, 3 months old, brought by a woman who comes alone, without a husband or sister or anyone, and who gives a name to Mr. Fenn at the door that you do not catch. She sits in the reception room while you work. When the plate is ready and Mr. Fenn brings it to her, she looks at it for a long time and then puts it in her bag and pays and leaves, and you do not know anything more about her than that. The third appointment on Wednesday is a Dr. Culpepper referral. Dr. Culpepper's referrals come with a note in the appointment book that says referred by Dr. C, and sometimes they come with a small additional note about the circumstances, and sometimes they do not. This one does not. The family that arrives at 3 in the afternoon is a man of perhaps 60, a woman of perhaps 55, and 3 adult children, 2 daughters and a son. They have lost another son. The note in the book says, age 22. The family is from Stockwell. The son they have lost is named Thomas. He was a student at King's College on the Strand, reading natural philosophy, which is what they call physics when they want to indicate that it is a serious subject pursued by serious people. He died of a fever that began as influenza and became, within a week, pneumonia. And pneumonia in 1867 has no treatment beyond rest and warmth and the hope that the lungs hold. Often they do not. The family has brought Thomas in good clothes. A dark jacket, a white shirt, a cravat that one of the sisters has tied at the collar, with a care that is very visible because it is not quite straight, and the slight crookedness of it is the sign of someone tying a cravat on a person who cannot adjust it themselves, doing their best, not quite reaching the result they are reaching for. You do not straighten the cravat. Mr. Fenn does not straighten it. You prepare the plates. The family wants a sitting with the mother's hand on her son's, and this is possible because the mother is willing to be partially in the frame, seated beside the platform with her hand reaching across to rest on his. Mr. Fenn positions this carefully, making sure the mother's hand is in focus at the same plane as the son's face, which requires the camera to be set at an angle that takes in both the face and the hands at the near distance. The exposure is 6 seconds. You make 3 exposures. The second plate is the best. The tonal range across both the face and the hands is even, and the mother's hand, which is larger than her son's, rests on his with an exactness that is entirely accidental and entirely right. Mr. Fenn shows this plate to the family. The older daughter says, "That's him." Not, "That looks like him." Not, "That's a good photograph." That's him. You carry the plate back to the shelf. You write Osman on the paper tag, because that is the family name in the ledger, and you place it with the others, and you go back to the preparation room and you clean the developer tray and the fixing tray and the silver nitrate bath, and you do it with the same attention you bring to everything, because that is the work, and the work does not change because of what it sometimes carries. That evening, walking home along Cold Harbor Lane, you pass a group of children playing in the light of a gas lamp. They are perhaps 9 or 10 years old, chasing each other in a game that has rules you cannot deduce from the outside, and their breath comes in white clouds and they are shouting, and you watch them for a moment from across the street before you move on. You are 17. You have been doing this work for 10 months. You have not thought about being 17 for quite some time. There is a sitting in the second week of December that requires you to go out again. Mr. Fenn receives the request by letter, which arrives on Monday morning and which he reads twice before setting it on the chalkboard ledge and saying, "We have a commission from Clapham, a house on Rectory Grove. They are asking for Thursday afternoon. I will need you to manage the field kit entirely. I will handle the client and the composition. You handle everything else." Everything else means the kit, the chemistry, the plates, and the timing. Thursday is cold in a specific way, the cold that comes when the wind drops completely and the temperature falls into the ground and stays there, the still cold. The kind where the air itself seems to have stopped moving. You load the field kit onto the handcart at 1 o'clock, and you and Mr. Fenn walk it through the streets toward Clapham, which takes 25 minutes at handcart pace, and by the time you reach Rectory Grove, the tips of your fingers inside your gloves are numb, which concerns you because numb fingers make poor chemistry. The house on Rectory Grove is larger than the Alderton house. It is a detached villa, 3 stories, with a small front garden and a black crepe on the door knocker, and a maid who opens the door before you knock. The family inside is a father, 2 adult sons, and a daughter of perhaps 20. They have lost the mother, who was 51, and whose name is given in Mr. Fenn's appointment book as Mrs. Catherine Morley. The father is a solicitor, which you understand from the way the house is arranged, the bookshelves in the hall, the quality of the furniture, the order of a house that has been maintained carefully over a long time. They take you upstairs. Mrs. Morley is in the bedroom in a white nightgown, and the room has been prepared before you arrived. The bed straightened, the curtains drawn to the right position, a vase of hothouse flowers on the dresser, which is a detail that costs money in December, and which the family has spent without hesitation. You set up the field kit in the corner. Your fingers are still numb. You press them against the inside of your coat, both hands flat against your chest, and hold them there for 2 minutes while Mr. Fenn speaks to the family in the hallway. The warmth of the house, which is significantly warmer than the studio, works slowly from the outside of your hands inward. By the time Mr. Fenn calls you in, you can feel the tips of your fingers again. You coat the first plate. In this warmer room, the collodion sets slightly faster than it does in the cold studio, which means the tilt needs to be marginally quicker, the rotation covering the surface before the edge begins to set. You adjust for this without thinking about it, the way you have adjusted for the spirit lamp temperature and the December light and the variability of the December silver nitrate bath. All of it accumulated in your hands over 10 months of doing it. The plate goes into the darkroom canteen. 2 minutes. You count. The light in the room comes from 2 sources. The west-facing bedroom window, which in the December afternoon gives a low orange-gold light that falls at a steep angle across the bed, and a lamp that the daughter has placed on the bedside table, which Mr. Fenn has moved to the dresser because the lamp on the bedside table would create a hot spot in the lower right corner of the frame. Mr. Fenn positions the camera. He says, 6 seconds. The lamp is adding to the window light, and I want to use it, but we need to be careful with the highlights on the pillow. You note this, and you think about what it means for the development. More light in the room means the plate will receive more exposure, which means the highlights, the white of the pillow and the white of the nightgown, will be dense in the negative, which means in the final print they will be the brightest areas, which is correct. But if the exposure is even slightly too long, the highlights will block up entirely and lose all texture. You pull the dark slide. Mr. Fenn removes the lens cap. 6 seconds. The development in the corner of the bedroom, under the red lantern on the floor, goes well. The highlights come in bright, but not blocked. The face holds its tonal range. The flowers on the dresser, behind the subject, are visible as a soft shape, out of focus but present, which is exactly the kind of incidental detail that makes a photograph feel like a room rather than a backdrop. You fix the plate. You bring it to Mr. Fenn. He looks at it. He shows it to the family. The daughter looks at it the longest. She says, "The flowers are in it." Mr. Fenn says yes. She says she always had flowers in that room. Mr. Fenn says nothing. You make 2 more exposures. Mr. Fenn selects the first. You pack the field kit in the December afternoon, which is already going dark at 4 o'clock, the light outside the window turning from gold to gray while you work, and you repack every component in its correct position in the wooden case and close the latches and carry it downstairs. At the door, the father shakes Mr. Fenn's hand and says, "We were told you were the right person for this." Mr. Fenn says, "I hope we have done well by her." The father looks at him. He says, "I believe you have." You carry the field kit back to the handcart, and you and Mr. Fenn walk back through the December dark to Cold Harbor Lane, the gas lamps on all the way, the handcart rattling on the stone sets of the road, the cold complete now, and the breath of both of you visible in the lamplight, and neither of you speaks much, because there is nothing that needs saying, and because the work you have done in the house on Rectory Grove is still present in some way that does not require words, and because walking in cold air after a day of careful work is its own kind of completion. Back in the studio, you unpack the kit and clean every component and put everything in its place. The Morley plate goes on the shelf. You write the name on the tag. You close the shutters. Christmas comes and goes in the way Christmas comes and goes for people who are working. You have the 25th off and the 26th, and you spend the 25th at home with your mother and Agnes, who has come back from the Kendalls for 3 days and who has grown, you think, in a way that is not only height. She asks you about the studio. You tell her something, not everything. She listens and says, "Is it strange?" You say, "It was strange at first." She says, "And now?" You say, "Now it's work." She thinks about this. She says, "I think that might be the right answer." You are not sure it is, but you do not have a better one. On the 27th, you are back at the studio at 7:40. January arrives. January brings its own arithmetic. You have been at the studio for almost exactly 1 year when January begins, and you mark this privately, not on the chalkboard, not in any conversation, but in the way you walk through the preparation room in the morning, running the inventory in your head, the way you adjust the spirit lamp under the developer bottle without being told. The way you look at the appointment book, not just for today, but for the shape of the week. The body of this work lives in your hands now in a way it did not a year ago. This is not pride. It is simply an observation about where things are. Mr. Fenn has begun, over the past 2 months, to give you more of the studio sitting, not just the dark room. You still do not conduct the initial conversation with clients, which is Mr. Fenn's responsibility and which requires a steadiness and precision that he has developed over 11 years and that you understand will take time to develop in yourself. But you now manage the arrangement in the studio when the composition is straightforward. A single subject, lying, with a standard background. Mr. Fenn is in the building. He checks the final positioning before exposure, but the preparation is yours. This is more than you expected when you answered the advertisement in the South London press in March. It is significantly more than you would have been permitted at the cabinet maker in Peckham. You think about this occasionally. You do not think about it too much. The winter of 1868 is, like the winter before it, a season of increased work. The reason for this is not complicated. London in winter dies at a rate that London in summer does not. The causes are multiple and interacting. The cold itself, which exacerbates existing respiratory conditions and creates new ones. The damp, which is a different thing from cold and works alongside it. The crowding, which in winter becomes more extreme as people move indoors and remain there, sharing rooms and sharing air. And the seasonal illnesses that move through the population in waves, scarlet fever in autumn and winter, diphtheria at any time but worse in cold months, consumption always but visibly worse when the cold settles into the chest and will not leave. In January of 1868, the Registrar General will record 2,847 deaths in London in a single week. You will not see this figure until March, when Mr. Fenn reads it from a clipping in a medical journal that a colleague sends him annually. You will feel it before you read it. In the appointment book in January, there are 11 commissions in 3 weeks. 11. You prepare the plates. You manage the chemistry. You assist with arrangements in the studio. You conduct 2 independent sittings, while Mr. Fenn is out for an afternoon at the chemist's supply house, having been unable to wait for a delivery and requiring the silver nitrate crystals today rather than Thursday. He tells you before he leaves, there are 2 appointments this afternoon, at 2 and at 3. Both are single subjects, standard arrangements. You know what to do. You do know what to do. The 2 o'clock appointment is a woman who has lost her mother, an elderly woman of perhaps 80, and the arrangement is simple and the chemistry goes correctly, and the plate is good when you develop it, and you set it on the shelf in the correct position with the paper tag, and move to the preparation for 3 o'clock. The 3 o'clock appointment is a man named Mr. Reeve who has lost his brother. The brother is 40 and was a carpenter and has large hands. Mr. Reeve is perhaps 35 and is very quiet throughout the whole sitting. He does not ask questions. He watches you work. After the exposure, while you are in the dark room, you hear him in the studio. which is separated from the dark room only by the preparation room. And the sound you hear is not crying exactly, but is its own thing, a quiet, effortful sound that a person makes when they are controlling something very large with a great deal of attention. You stay in the dark room until the plate is fixed. You bring it out. You show it to Mr. Reeve. He looks at it. He says he looks like himself. You say yes. He says, "Is that always the case?" You think about this. You say it is always the case when the person who brings them cares about it being the case. Mr. Reeve looks at you. He says, "You're young for this work." You say, "I hear that occasionally." He looks at the plate again. He says, "You do it well." He pays and leaves. You stand in the preparation room with the plate in the holder, and you think about what you just said, which came out of you without planning, and which you are not certain is correct, but which feels, upon consideration, approximately true. When the person who brings them cares about it being the case, you think about Mrs. Hartley, who said nothing but who stood 3 feet from her son for the entire sitting. You think about Mr. Sanderson, who brought the chair. You think about Mr. Frederick Okafor, who asked about the negative, who wanted to know that the image was not only in the prints. You think about the mother who came alone, without anyone whose name you did not catch, and who put the plate in her bag and left, and who you will never know anything more about. You put the plate on the shelf. You write Reeve on the tag. You clean the developer tray. Mr. Fenn returns at 4:30 with the silver nitrate crystals. He comes into the preparation room and looks at the shelf. He looks at you. He says, "Both appointments." You say yes. He says, "Problems?" You say none. He looks at the shelf again, at the 2 new plates tagged and positioned correctly between their card protectors. He sets the crystals on the bench. He says you handled them well, both of them. He adds the silver nitrate to the storage jar, notes the quantity on the chalkboard, and hangs his coat. You begin the end of day clean. It is February when the sitting happens that you will think about longest. February the 11th, which falls on a Tuesday, which is a day that begins like every other day, with the cold preparation room and the chalkboard and the spirit lamp and the plates on the bench. There is one appointment in the book for the morning, a Miss Clara Hewitt, referred by Dr. Culpepper, no additional note. The appointment is for 10. At 10:10, a man arrives. He is perhaps 45, thin, wearing a black coat that is not new, and he is holding his hat in both hands in the way that people hold things when they do not know what to do with their hands. He gives his name as Mr. Arthur Hewitt. He says his daughter has died. He says she was 18 years old. He says she died 4 days ago of a fever, and that she has been at home, and that his wife has been with her, and that today his wife asked him to come here because his wife cannot leave the house and cannot bring herself to leave the house and cannot come today, and that he has brought his daughter because he knows she needs to be taken from the house today, and this was the only thing his wife asked him to do, to bring her here first. He says all of this standing in the reception room with his hat in both hands. Mr. Fenn says, "Please sit down, Mr. Hewitt." He sits. You go to the preparation room. You coat the first plate. You tilt it in the rotation, 12 seconds. You set it on the rack. You check the spirit lamp under the developer bottle. You check the silver nitrate bath temperature by pressing your palm near the surface without touching it, which tells you nothing precise but tells you it is not significantly different from yesterday, and yesterday the bath was at the correct temperature. You go back to the reception room doorway. Mr. Fenn is still speaking to Mr. Hewitt, his voice steady and level, the same cadence for every family that walks through this door. You look at the man with the hat. You look away. You go to the preparation room and you coat the second plate. When Mr. Hewitt has been settled and when the arrangement has been made, which takes longer than usual because there is only Mr. Hewitt to consult and he does not know. He keeps saying he does not know what she would have wanted. He doesn't know, and Mr. Fenn says gently that it is all right, that he will make suggestions and Mr. Hewitt can simply say yes or no. And this takes perhaps 20 minutes, but at the end of it, the studio is arranged and the platform is ready. Mr. Hewitt carries his daughter in from the preparation room, where she has been resting on the board, and he lays her on the platform, and he steps back. She is wearing a white dress. Her hair is brown and has been brushed. She is 18 years old. You are 17. You note this, and you do not think further about it. You go to the camera. Mr. Fenn says, "You do the arrangement." You look at him. He says nothing else. You go to the platform. You look at the composition as it currently is, the position of the head, the hands, the angle of the body on the pillow. You make 3 adjustments. The first, you turn the head very slightly toward the camera, perhaps 4 degrees, the same adjustment Mr. Fenn made in the Alderton bedroom in November, the adjustment that brings the light from the north-facing skylight onto the face cleanly. You do it with 2 fingers beneath the pillow near the right ear. The adjustment takes 3 seconds. The second, you draw the right hand forward from where it is resting against the body, and you place it at the edge of the platform, the fingers resting open, the way they settle when the muscles have released. The third, you check the reflector panel on the right side and open it by 4 inches. Because the white dress will reflect significant light back up into the face from below, and without the additional fill on the right side, the shadow under the chin will be too deep. You step back. You look at the composition. You look at Mr. Fenn. He looks at the platform for a moment. He says, "The head another 2 degrees toward the camera." You go back in and make the adjustment. You step back. He says, "Correct." You load the first plate into the camera. The exposure is 4 seconds. Mr. Fenn removes the lens cap. You count. In the darkroom, the image comes up the way it always comes up. The lightest areas first. The white of the dress, then the face, then the hand at the edge of the platform, relaxed, at rest. You pour the fixer. You clean the plate. You bring it out. Mr. Fenn takes it. He looks at it. He looks at you. He says, "Good work, Edmund." Not the chemistry, not the plate. The work. You make a second exposure. And a third. Mr. Fenn selects the first plate as the primary. Mr. Hewitt looks at the plate when it is shown to him. and he stands with it for a long time, longer than most people stand with the wet plate, which is still fragile and still wet, and should not be held for more than 30 seconds. Mr. Fenn does not hurry him. Mr. Hewitt says, "Her mother will want to see this." Mr. Fenn says, "The prints will be ready Friday." Mr. Hewitt says, "Could we have 4 prints? His wife, himself, 1 for the aunt in Bristol, 1 to keep in the case." Mr. Fenn says, "Of course." Mr. Hewitt hands back the plate. He puts his hat on. He thanks Mr. Fenn. He looks at you. He says, "Thank you." You say, "The prints will be ready Friday." He nods. He leaves. The studio is very quiet. You go to the preparation room and you put the plate on the shelf and you write Hewitt on the tag and you place it between the card protectors and you stand for a moment with your hands at your sides. Mr. Fenn comes to the doorway. He says, "You adjusted the head correctly." You say, "I remembered what you did in the Alderton bedroom." He says, "You have been paying attention." You say, "Yes." He says, "It shows." He goes to check the appointment book. You clean the developer tray. You clean the fixing tray. You replace the silver nitrate in the bath. You do all of this the way you have done it every day for almost a year, and the February cold is still in the room, and the spirit lamp is still burning under the developer bottle, and the chalkboard has its notes in 2 different hands, and outside on Cold Harbor Lane, the city is going about its business, which it does without pausing, which it has always done without pausing, which it will continue to do. You are not certain yet what you will do with this work in the long run. You are not certain whether this studio will be yours one day, or whether you will go somewhere else, or whether in 5 years the wet plate process will have been replaced by something faster and simpler, and whether this combination of chemistry and glass and red lantern light will belong only to the years you are in now. You cannot know any of this. What you know is what is in your hands. You know the 12-second tilt of the collodion pour and the 2-minute silver nitrate bath and the moment the developer needs to stop, which is visible in the plate itself if you know how to watch for it. You know the correct angle of the head clamp for an adult and a child and an infant. You know what the light from the north-facing skylight does at 10 in the morning, and what it does at 3 in the afternoon, and what the spirit lamp needs to do on a cold February morning to compensate for the room. You know that the hands are how people know each other. You know that the light in a room is alive until the lens cap comes off, and then it is fixed, and the 2 things exist in the same plate, the living light and the fixed moment. And that is what you are making when you make these photographs. Not a record of death. A record of light falling on a face. You put the lint cloth back on its hook. You check the plates on the shelf. Hewitt, Reeve, Osman, Alderton, Sanderson, Hartley, all the names, all the paper tags, all the plates resting between their card protectors in the ordered dark of the preparation room shelf. You will print the Hewitt plates on Friday. You will gold tone them in the toning bath. You will mount them on card and put them in the hinged case with the purple velvet lining, 4 of them. And when Mr. Hewitt comes to collect them on Friday afternoon, you will hand them to him, and he will take them to the house on whatever street the Hewitts live on, and 1 print will go to the aunt in Bristol, and one will stay in the case, and one will be his, and one will be his wife's, and his wife will open her print and look at it, and she will have, from that moment, something she can hold. This is the whole of the work. You have known this since October. You understand it more completely now. You lock the preparation room shutters against the February night. You check the spirit lamp is out. You check the chalkboard one last time. Tomorrow's appointments are written in Mr. Fenn's hand. 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 tomorrow. You will need 9 plates at minimum. You go through the preparation in your head as you put your coat on. 9 plates. Check the collodion level. Check the developer. Check the silver nitrate concentration with the hydrometer before the first appointment. Open the right side reflector for the 9 o'clock, because the early light is low this month and the fill will be needed. You lock the studio. The key turns with its slight resistance at the top of the turn, the same resistance as the first morning, the same key, the same lock. You step out into Cold Harbor Lane. The gas lamps are on. The street smells of coal smoke and damp stone, and the cold itself, which has its own smell in London, a mineral smell. A smell of iron and old water. A cart horse is standing at the curb outside the coal merchant 2 doors down. Its breath visible in the lamplight, steady and even. The breath of an animal that is simply present in the cold. You walk toward Wells Street. The city goes on around you, its streets and houses and grates and lamps all going at once. And somewhere in it there are families sitting with the hinged cases open in the lamplight, looking at the faces inside. And somewhere there are families who do not yet know they will need to find a studio on Cold Harbor Lane. And all of this is simply the city, which has always been this way, which does not stop and does not slow. You are ready for it. You turn onto Wells Street. The lamp is on in the front window. You go inside. You eat. You wash your hands. The stain along the edge of your left thumb is as permanent as ever. The dark line that the silver nitrate put there in your first week, and that no amount of scrubbing will remove. You have stopped scrubbing. You go to bed. Outside your window, London goes on. The coal burns in the grates of 10,000 houses, and the gas lamps burn on 10,000 streets, and the river moves in the dark toward the sea, and the city breathes its coal smoke breath into the February night. On the shelf in the preparation room on Cold Harbor Lane, the plates rest in order, each one between its card protectors, each one holding its fixed light, each one waiting to be printed. The Hewitt plate is there. The face, the white dress, the hand at the edge of the platform. The north light, fixed. You sleep. The city does not sleep. But you do, and it is enough. The clean tiredness of a day that asked something real of you, and to which you gave what it asked. And the February dark outside your window is very quiet. And tomorrow there are 9 plates, and the chemistry will be ready. The night moves the way nights move when the body is finished. The sounds from the street soften. The cart has stopped. The voices are gone. The city's noise has moved to a different register, lower, more distant, the sound of a thing still going but no longer pressing at the window. Your breathing slows. The blanket is heavy and warm. You think briefly about the Hewitt plate on the shelf, the white dress, the hand at the edge of the platform. You think about it the way you think about the plates sometimes before sleep, not with weight, but with the calm of something correctly done, correctly stored, waiting in the dark for Friday. The lamp in the front room is out. The house is dark. The city outside is still going, its fires and lamps and river and stone, all of it continuous, and you are one person in one bed in one house, on one street in the middle of it. And tomorrow there are 9 plates, and the collodion is on the shelf, and the spirit lamp will warm the developer, and the north light will come through the skylight the way it always does. Tomorrow, 9 plates. The collodion, the tilt, the silver bath, the red lamp. The image coming up out of nothing. The light fixed. You are still. The city holds you in its lamplight and its cold and its coal smoke, in the ongoing fact of it, which is enough, which has always been enough. The February night is long. Your eyes are closed. The plates are resting. Good night. If this story found you, the channel is Quiet History at Bedtime. A subscribe or a like takes 4 seconds and keeps these stories coming. Every detail in this story came from the historical record. Sleep well.